My name is Azza Ayouty. I'm an 8th grade math teacher, and I have been teaching for over 30 years. I am here today to share with you part of my life story with all the change that took place along the way. Change that helped me build up and move forward. Life is dynamic. It changes every time you talk to someone, read a book, watch a movie, listen to music. These are all learning experiences that lead to change, even if you do not recognize or notice that change is taking place and that you are carrying it back to your families. Families are dynamic. I was born in Alexandria, Egypt. I met my husband at age 18. We got married at age 30. We have 2 children, and we are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. I grew up in privileged circumstances. Big family, upper class, summer vacations, private schools. But I also grew with very restricting cultural traditions and set norms that were always observed. As a little kid, I was restless. My favorite question was why? I wanted to know why things happened. How did they happen? And what is going to happen next? I attended the English Girls College, better known as the EGC. It is a K-12 school that was established and mentored by the Queen of England. I had British teachers. I learned my English alphabet before my Arabic alphabet. I loved my school. Mostly because of the library. You see, I was introduced to reading at a very young age. By age 10, I had outread and outgrown the elementary and middle school libraries, and I was introduced to the high school library. In there, I had a special spot where I would sit and read for as long as I was allowed. The best part about it was that I always had a stack of books ready to go home with me. One time, stuck without a book to read, I read my mom's very impressive first aid books, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Reading opened up my horizons and introduced me to a world I could not reach, and sometimes I could not understand. For example, I did not understand the meaning of the word hot dog. Reading about children eating hot dogs was just not appetizing. When I got older, I realized that my feeling of restlessness was because I wanted to learn more about life. I always had lots of questions, but never enough venues to seek the answers. I loved reading and tried to find the answers in books, but my need to know even more continued to grow. Sometimes, I felt like I was trying to figure out the world on my own. Getting to college, I attended the University of Alexandria, and I wanted to study the sciences and the liberal arts. But unfortunately, in Egypt, you cannot combine between the two. I had to choose. I chose the sciences because I knew I needed a teacher to learn them. The liberal arts, I figured I can learn on my own. So I continued to study the sciences, and I continued to read, and I continued to look for something that I still could not identify. By my sophomore year, My sister got married and came to live here in the United States. I missed her a lot. My dad asked, "Do you want to go visit your sister, or do you want a car?" Oh, without any hesitation and with great excitement, I shouted, "A car!" I guess the excitement was just a little bit too much because my dad sent me to visit my sister. My trip to the United States was full of firsts. First time to travel without my parents, first time to travel overseas, first time on an airplane. And once I got on the airplane, I pulled my sister's 20-page long letter, which she was famous for and which we loved. In it, she explained every single step of the trip, including where to locate the bathroom on the airplane and how to use it. It was my first time at McDonald's, first time at Baskin Robbins. I can tell you that there's absolutely nothing like a Big Mac followed by a banana split. The learning curve was very steep, and the weight gain was a disaster. Finally, I was able to identify what I was looking for. I wanted to travel. I wanted learning opportunities, to attend college in the United States. I wanted to build myself up through new experiences. I wanted change. So now I had a goal, and to achieve it, I needed to come back to the United States. I applied for and received a fellowship to Duke University to study microbiology. In microbiology lab, and I'm sitting writing a report, and I made a mistake, and I asked in a loud voice, "Does anybody have a rubber?" Oh, noting the silence and seeing the startled looks, I knew something was wrong. Then a student who recognized my British accent at that time started laughing and said, "She's asking for an eraser." I learned how to share the moment and embrace it and share in the laughter. And they learned that the English-speaking student still had a lot of learning to do. From that moment, my friends took on my social education. They introduced me to American literature, Huck Finn. They took me hiking and canoeing and camping. I tried peanut butter on white bread, no jelly, and washed down with root beer. I also experienced my first kiss, rock concert. After that, I went back to Egypt for 2 years and tried to settle down. But my need for change was still very strong. So I applied for a scholarship with Rotary International. I arrived in St. Cloud, Minnesota, as ambassador of goodwill to represent Egypt and to study for my master's degree. All I'm going to say about that is that Minnesota weather plus anyone from Egypt equals a really freezing experience. Some of my memorable moments in St. Cloud include having awesome host parents who fully adopted me from the moment I arrived at the airport and throughout my stay. We shared many dinners. They taught me lots of new card games. And just like typical parents, we argued about things, including which classes I should be signing up for. Classes were awesome. I felt really welcomed by a professor when he said, "America is unique. not because it's a melting pot, but because it's a mixed salad, and that the mixing of all the flavors is what makes it such a wonderful place to live. In St. Cloud, I experienced snow for the first time. You see, snow looks so soft and fluffy when you see it in movies and pictures. Who would have thought that snow has such a loud, crunchy sound when you walk on it and really, really hurts when you take a fall? My roommate in St. Cloud introduced me to American coffee and the comics. She would read the comics, laugh out loud, and share with me. At first, I had a really difficult time understanding the humor. But soon, that changed as she continued to teach me and I continued to learn. I graduated from St. Cloud State University with a master's degree, summa cum laude, in curriculum and instruction. And I also graduated with a very strong taste for coffee and very good understanding of American humor. I loved the field of education and wanted to continue my studies, so I attended Illinois State University to study for my doctorate in education. I completed all the coursework, but prior to completing and submitting my theses, I decided to stop and to begin building my own personal life. I got married, I moved to San Diego, and I started my family. It was time. I worked with the Diocese of San Diego for 17 years as a high school science and math teacher. I might have been the only Muslim in San Diego who attended weekly Mass, knew many of the priests by first name, and enjoyed Father Joe's humor during our senior graduations. You see, Father Joe would have us teachers confess as to which students were naughty, and then he would tease them about it during the ceremony. During this period, I watched my daughter and my son grow and get to middle school and high school. I thought I was done with change, I'm a grown-up now. Little did I know, the change never stops. My daughter and my son helped me build bridges between my ingrained cultural beliefs and the person I have become today. In my adulthood, I did not see or understand that I am still experiencing change until it was mirrored back to me through my children. Seeing my reflection in them really brought it back. The change never stopped. At that moment, I knew that my children grew up watching me as I learned and as I changed. Now, they are holding my hand and teaching me how to continue the journey. I am proud to recognize the achievements and accomplishments of my daughter and my son. The next generation in my family has a dentist and a doctor. I also learned from my students. I learned technology from my students. Instagram, Facebook, shortcuts. I learned new social ends and music and young culture. My students have definitely changed me, just like I have changed many of my students. Some I help with the math and academics, and some I help build goals and dreams. I encourage my students to change in preparation for the transition from middle school to high school, and remind them to continue changing as they move on to college. Many of my students find me years later and share that my message led them to successful career paths. It is very humbling to know that I was able to touch so many lives just by reminding them of the value of learning. Today, I am still seeking new learning experiences. I'm an avid reader and learn a lot from books. I am an enthusiastic people watcher and learn from the reactions and responses. And I am still trying to learn how to knit a sock that isn't a mile long and cuts off circulation at the toes. I am here today to encourage you to go find new experiences and to expect change. If you don't like the change, learn something different and change the change. Embrace change and build upon it, for it can only make us better people, better communities, a better world, a better mixed salad. Thank you.